days, 930 days since Richard vanished from the barracks there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. Um, yeah, he didn't just vanish. Something happened, and we knew that. We knew that as his family. He didn't just vanish. He didn't just walk away. Something had to happen, Um, when you come from the background that Richard um, has come from, uh, you just don't walk away. Okay, that so something had to happen, and we wanted to know the story. So we were kicked out. We were kicked out, and when I say we, it's because I am Richard Halliday. Richard, they failed him. They did not contact family, and they then kicked him out. So even after they did not follow their standard operating procedures, which is to contact family and then send the family, if that doesn't work, a 2 week letter. And their excuse was, oh, we couldn't find you. No, it took the CID, and they admitted it, less than a minute to find my husband's number and address. Okay, we're very transparent. You can still find it. You can still find it. So we're not hard to find. And so we knew, because we weren't hard to find, and in this day and age, we knew that something was stinky. Something was stinky about this whole thing. And especially after we got thrown out, we knew that there were bigger powers behind this, that it wasn't just some unit members. Okay? We knew this had to have power behind it for them to take a missing soldier, not contact the family, not send the 2 week letter, kick him out. This is during Vanessa Guillen, y'all. This is during Austin Hawk and Enrique Roman Martinez and Gregory Morales and Elder Fernandez um, and Caleb Smither. Okay, uh, chaos was hitting the leadership of the Department of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff because of Vanessa Guillen. And the thing, and of course with Austin Hawk, and they never thought they would find Vanessa. Okay, they never thought they would. And by God's grace, by the hand of God, wild animals dug around that grave, very sophisticated grave. She was buried in a foxhole, all cut up, burnt, after being bludgeoned to death in the head so bad that they couldn't even use her dental records to identify her. And she had been sexually harassed. I've heard that she was sodomized. I don't know if that's true. That's what the lawyer said in an article that I read. But what about these articles? Can we trust the articles? They twist and turn things. But we do know that she was sexually harassed. We do know from her mother that there was something going on that Vanessa didn't like, and that Vanessa was a whistleblower. And we know that Vanessa comes from a very devout Catholic family, Roman Catholic family. And we know that she was experienced things she didn't like. And maybe some people out there can elaborate on that. But she was bludgeoned to death with a hammer, stuffed in a trunk. And this happened in the armory, the arms room. And all of her things were left behind. Her keys, her cell phone were all left behind. And they said she went AWOL. She was missing. She walked away. No. The family knew something was up. They knew something was stinky, just like we did. And they would not take those answers and just say, okay. They knew those answers were not right, like we did. And she was stuffed in a trunk, cut up, burnt, put in a foxhole, poured lime over her, poured concrete over her, dirt, leaves, branches, whatever, and animals. Animals. We need to protect our land. We need to protect our animals. Found her. And line workers, people were seeing the animals. What's going on there? And that's how they found her. So I talked to Texas EquiSearch. My husband talked to Texas EquiSearch. And that is an amazing story, because when they found the Pelican case, the trunk that her body had been stuffed into, pieced into, they called off the search. The CID did, the Criminal Investigative Division for the military, for the Army. They called off the search. They sent Texas EquiSearch home when they were so close, had a victory, found the Pelican case. They had a video of the Pelican case, okay? They were getting close. They knew they were getting close. And they sent them home. We weren't even afforded. We weren't even allowed. We didn't even have a recourse, because Richard was in nobody's jurisdiction when they kicked him out. So we couldn't even put a missing persons report in for him. Do you understand? They knew, the leadership knew about everything going on with Richard. The leaked files, the Child Protective Service complaint, the porn. They knew. They knew. And yet they kicked him out and gave family no recourse. None. That was a sabotage. That was a sabotage. And even the Command Sergeant Major, Jake Jakovitz, played along with that sabotage. He knew that it was important. He knew Richard, okay? He knew Richard. He's distinguished honor graduate for his cycle in basic training in AIT. Of course they know. They know who the distinguished honor graduates are. And he comes in to Delta Battery 143. And he goes over and above and beyond the chain of command to make the complaint. Because he told me, Mom, they're very bad. They are very bad. That was his way of telling me. They're very bad. The leadership is very bad. And I don't want to be any part of them. Even though he had made E4 very quick, when I asked him about making E5, he goes, no way. I don't even want to be an NCO. And, looking at Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovitz and what they did to that man, what they turned him into, what his legacy is now, what his family is going to remember him for, saying they brought girls in during COVID and he didn't even know that he had a missing soldier on his rolls. He didn't know Halliday. And I don't believe him. And anyone in the military that hears something like that. No. Especially when they know that the barracks were flush with weapons, which is not allowed. They were not following the barracks SOP, which I should put up again. I need to put up in the live stream. They're a disgrace. They're an absolute disgrace. They've been twisted and turned, and PSYOPs has captured their brains, and they have been used for bad. They have been used by these 44 four-star generals as pawns in serving the foreign and domestic enemies of this country instead of defending the Constitution. So when Jakovich said that to us at a rally, he told me when he brought me the 2-week letter, wait, months later, right? He said he was embarrassed. He couldn't give it to my husband. He was embarrassed. That's the things they do to these command sergeant majors. They embarrass them. They twist them. They turn them. And they leave them with all the scut work and give them a bad legacy. You know, because they're afraid of retaliation. Very few have true courage, true personal courage. Very few of us have true personal courage. Very few of us. You know, it's a really very difficult thing because, you know, how many of us face those kind of choices to have to risk everything in life to do the right thing? Not many of us in the Western world, anyway. It's going to come to that because of the situations that are going on. We're going to have to find our personal courage once again, as a country. And today was a very interesting day to start with the hearings there, with the 4 executives of Twitter. And I want to play some of them. Last night was the State of the Union address, and like I said, this is the State of the Union right here. This is the State of the Union right here. I didn't make this, but we absolutely know there's truth in this. You should see the memes out there, because I'm even reading some of the the training. I've been sent some of the training that the military is receiving right now. And it's not about what you would think the military would need to know. It's all meant to twist their minds and make them vulnerable, make them very vulnerable, make them depressed. It's very interesting, some of the training. And as I get more of it and make sense of it, as far as can I show it? Are we ready to hear what's going on? Because it's hard for me to digest. Look at these doggy masks. This is all about a sex cult within our military and our 44 4-star generals. And I don't even like to call them generals, because they're demons that are wearing our beautiful uniforms with 4 stars. And they must be really, really bad in the dark, because in the light, they're despicable. And of course, in the dark, it gets much worse. And so we have the grooming of our own volunteer sons and daughters. Can you believe it? In our military? Grooming to sex cults, to porn, to suicide, to rapists, to being raped, to extortion, to racketeers, to drug dealers, druggies, alcoholics, practical jokers. No, I mean dangerous practical jokers. You heard me right. Dangerous. I'm talking about the practical jokes that kill esprit de corps. That's what I'm talking about. So, yeah, that's the State of the Union. And then today, and what does this have to do with Richard? Well, they absolutely knew They absolutely know. General McConville, 4-star General McConville, absolutely knows what's going on in this Find Richard Halliday case. And yet he staged a task force, Find Richard Halliday. So how closely is the FBI working with the military? The military traitors. They're traitors. Absolutely. It was the DOD that has been working on all of these treacherous plans, operational orders against their own people. They have been weaponized against their own people. On our dime. On our dime. Sweet. Sweet when it comes to the enemies. When it comes to the enemies. And what have they targeted? Families, relationships, our psychology. Okay, they call us white nationalists and racists and homophobes and this and this. Instead of just telling the truth, I've traveled enough places. I absolutely know the truth. My daughter is married to a Korean. I absolutely know the truth about how different countries work and how they guard who they are, not because they don't like other people, but because they guard who they are. They want to preserve their traditions, their identity. That's nothing against other people. That's just self-preservation. So, when you look at any of our agencies and organizations and any of our leadership, you can see clearly, our families, that it is a big lie. And, they have to start with the military, because the military needs to be the weapon against the people. It's huge. You cannot be a king without a military. You cannot be a king without knights. And so these foreign and domestic enemies, they have hijacked our military on our own dime. And they're using them against us. They're using our own volunteer sons and daughters against us. And it's a stealth. It's a stealth bomber. It's a psychological stealth bomber. We don't even see it coming. Even they don't see it coming. So when Richard, being outside of that quite a bit, because he's never been in a school, so all of those years of psychological manipulation, he did not live in the United States. All of those years of psychological manipulation, being homeschooled, being in the middle of Longford, middle of Longford, Ireland. Now, I'm not saying that's where he stayed. He was in Heidelberg. He was in Landstuhl near Ramstein. He was traveled around the world. It wasn't that he was sheltered. It's just that he was not programmed quite like the other volunteers. And one volunteer came up to me at a rally and said, "I thought your son was a pathological liar. I thought Halliday was a pathological liar." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, because he said he was born in Poland." I said, "Yeah, that's true." That he was adopted. Yep, that's true. That he was raised in Germany and Ireland. Yep, that's true. That he went over and took a Korean language course in Korea and joined the army from Korea. Yep, that's true. And I just didn't believe that he had never, that he clept college math when he was 15. I said, "Yep, that's true." And now I find out it was all true. You see, he was an anomaly to them. And then when he met the young mother and he defended her as a woman, as a mother and didn't treat her as a prostitute and a whore and a druggie or a mule, didn't treat her as a sex object, but as a real life, beautiful mother. And she said it. She said it to me. She said it to the PI in the long interview. He was an anomaly to her. He confused her. What? He wants to marry me? I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard. And so, to be a young man, 20, 21 years old, full of vim and vigor, but also morality, was an anomaly in that unit. And that's why he was trying to tell them, don't spend your money on whores and blow. Burn your money rather than spend it on whores and blow. Those big booty, you know whats. He was trying to speak in their language, trying to get a point across. And when things, I think when you're young, you realize that you don't have control over everything. And that what you have known, the self-governance of so many people around you, is not what you meet when you go out there. When you go out into the world, people are just out of control. And they have no selfless service. They serve themselves and their lust. And that's why this porn is so dangerous. Because they rear puppies, or they are reared puppies, and they are just in these sex cults, and they found a way to make this porn, to produce this porn, to sell the porn, to broadcast this porn, and to make money off of it. And to get demons in high places with stars on their uniforms to cover for them, to help them. Same with the marketplace for illegal drugs. If anyone is in doubt that our government leadership is the problem, then they haven't been paying attention. Because there's no way our military can have a sexual assault problem, a sexual harassment problem, a suicide problem, a mental health problem, PTSD problem, mental health medication galore, so much so that they have to build a building out of taxpayers' money to address PTSD, and that they have a brutal crime problem. They have an alcohol problem. They have an extortion problem. They have a racketeering problem. They have a esprit de corps, non-esprit de corps problem. They have a huge, huge problem. They have a recruiting problem. They have a retention problem. And when you have 44 demons wearing our beautiful uniforms with 4 stars on it, and everything becomes demonic, don't wonder why. It's right there in front of your eyes. And I've shed a lot of tears over this because of the CID, because of the FBI, because of the Customs and Border Protectors, because of the U.S. Marshals. There are good people in all of that. In the military, there are good people in all of that. And they come in as elves, and then they get twisted and turned and retaliated against, tortured. They get tortured and twisted into demons. J.R.R. Tolkien was sending us a message. And this is absolutely what's been happening. And it's more dangerous for our children in our on our installations, our military installations, under these demon leaders than in a hostile zone. That's a hard truth. And it is so bad that we have, for our State of the Union, people making memes of our 4-star uniforms with doggy porn masks on, where a colonel was showing his erection publicly in a dog mask on our installations, in our buildings, in our uniforms, disgracing the United States, disgracing everyone that lives here and anyone that's protected by the United States Army. And they protected him because there's so many of them. There's so many of this porn cult, these dogs, demon dogs. And they protect them. They didn't protect the unvaccinated. They didn't protect those that said no. They didn't protect the doctors that said, wait a minute, people are under a lot of medication. You can't just say you can give the same Cobra Strike to everyone because they might have a different reaction. It's not safe. And so now we have here that it is demonic, because you have the Moderna CEO, Stefan, I think his name is Stefan Bancel. He is admitting here that listen to him.
Let's talk about vaccine development, because we've heard how it happened, obviously, with COVID-19 starting from 20.
Where we are today is we have manufacturing capacity. As Seth knows, when the pandemic happened, Moderna had made 100,000 doses in 2019 for the whole year. And I remember walking after Davos into the office of my head of manufacturing, and I say, how we make 1 billion doses next year? And he looked at me a bit funny, say, what? I say, yeah, we need to make 1 billion doses next year. There's going to be a pandemic.
Can you believe that? Can you believe that? Listen to, I should play it over and over again. But he is saying that in 2019, they made 100,000 COVID-19 vaccine doses. Moderna did. And he walked in and said, next year, we're going to have to make 1 billion. How are we going to make 1 billion? Do we have that kind of manufacturing ability? This and all that's paid with the Department of Defense funds. Department of Defense contracting. That's what I heard. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Because I heard that they even contracted out the likes of CVS and Walgreens. They did all the psychological preparation for all of the advertisement and also the tyranny behind it. They used the Department of Defense to do this. This was so demonic, y'all. And it's even worse than that, because if you've kept up with Christine Massey, she deserves an award, because she FOIA'd, and I posted that on Find Richard Halliday Facebook. She FOIA'd many different universities, labs, hospitals, you name it, around government facilities to give her a isolated virus. Not one. Not a one. Not even rabies for our dogs. Can you believe it? This is how they've hoodwinked us for over a century. And Congress has so much on their plate because the lies are so big that they are getting to the Twitter and the Facebook. And I'll tell you this, with our numbers, absolutely, we have been told that our Facebook was being shadow banned. And this is our only recourse for our only recourse. Let me turn that. Oh no, I'll leave it. This was our only recourse for finding Richard, because absolutely we knew that the high-ranking Major General Clem Coward has a lot of explaining to do, because he was the commander for Richard Halliday, for Leilani Hart, for Dallas Hart at the same time. And Leilani Hart is involved in this case in not a good way, and her son is Dallas Hart. Right there, all under the same commander, Major General Clem Coward, right there at Fort Bliss in El Paso. And where's Richard? And why has there been such vile venom spewed for my son, who is a yellow Interpol, saying, just burn your money, and instead of spending it on whores and blow. I think that would make some people really mad if they're making money off of whores and blow. When he goes to Child Protective Services, which, he didn't know that they're corrupt too. I think that would make some people very upset if they make their money on porn, because if you do porn, you support child sex trafficking. So let's listen to Margie Taylor Greene. She's from Georgia. Let's listen to her and see what she has to say.
Permanently banned my personal Twitter account, and it was my campaign account also. So let's talk about election interference, shall we? January 2nd, 2002, you permanently banned my Twitter account. This was the account that I would put my campaign ads on, raise money on, fight back when attacked with lies, and be able to talk to my voters in my district. But you banned it. And then let me explain. My account was not reinstated until November 21st, 2022. That was after my election on November 8th. At your company, or your former company where you worked, Twitter employees, over 98% of them donate to Democrats. So while you coordinated with DHS, the FBI, the CIA, our government, and outside groups to permanently shadow ban conservative Americans and candidates like me and the former president of the United States, President Donald J. Trump, you were censoring and wrongfully violating our First Amendment free speech rights. Guess what? None of you hold security clearances. None of you are elected, and none of you represent 750,000 people like I do.
Yeah, and she goes on, if you haven't seen it, she goes on to really give it to them. And rightfully so. They all need to be, we know how bold they were. We knew, I was told, go on Twitter, go on Twitter, go on Twitter. I was like, okay, I'll go on Twitter for a little bit. But it is so shadow banned. It was just, we did not have that as an option as Find Richard Halliday. When you are trying to talk about the military, being involved in pornography, being involved in covering up a missing soldier, because a missing soldier is a whistleblower for something you don't want to be revealed, then we knew, because we had asymmetric warfare right from the beginning, right from Danae, from the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel. We knew that the father-in-law, this man, this Dollar General man, I used to call him Dollar General man, that said that he was FBI, with the FBI, and that the FBI had found Richard's remains there in Juarez, Mexico. And he was, he's dead. When that happened and they just blew him off, something was strange. Then we found out we had FBI informants infiltrated into Find Richard Halliday. We were receiving vile and vulgar messages on our phone, on our hotline, for months. And it was really bad. And so we finally decided that we were going to try to trace these numbers. And we did it. And we turned in those numbers, and it was crickets. When we couldn't get, when we found out that the task force Find Richard Halliday did not have an op board, we absolutely knew. When they, my husband knew the minute that we got there and they were not in uniform. That means it's unofficial. That's like a picnic, a barbecue, and he knew something was up. I didn't know. I was a much kinder person, and I didn't know too much about the military, but my husband did. And he was so calm. He was trying to figure out what was going on. And when Hema Xochitl came in and we found out she was Richard's first sergeant's wife, and she was being upset at us that we were looking for our son, she didn't like it. And then when we read First Sergeant Jay Pollins, which was another one of Richard's first sergeants that retired right before he went missing, or around the end of 2019. And everything happened in 2019, y'all. Everything happened with Richard, except for him going missing. So yeah, on our calendar, correct me. I'd love it. I'd love to be corrected on that. But when we read his messages and saw the two-faced of Jay Paulin, it was very interesting. Red flags went up. It wasn't so much of their personalities, it was their response. And so we knew something was up. Something wasn't right. Something happened to Richard, and they're hiding it. And then more and more leaked information came out, like a CID special agent leaking Richard's file to Leilani Hart, the mother of Dallas Hart. And now we have information that shows they were up to more than just getting the leaked files, okay? They were up to more, and it's not good. It's not good. And then we, more information constantly coming out, and the attack of someone reporting to the FBI that Richard was dumped in uniform in Juarez, which fit with what the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel, I forgot to mention that, the Dollar General man turns out to be the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM. Now, if that doesn't make your jaw drop, because that's G3, that's op boards. Those are the wedding planners. They know everything. They know what's going on. That's Major General Clem Coward's little crew. You see? That is Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovitz's little crew. That's the crew. And And then you have Command Sergeant Major Jake Jakovich shaking in front of us. I would call him Shaky Jake. In private. I'm like, Shaky Jake, he knows something. He's shaking worse than leaves on a fall tree. And defensive with my dad. Rest in peace, Dad. And the FBI saying, oh, he's not FBI. Yeah, he's not FBI. He's a... Well, then what is he? He's an FBI informant then, right? So very clear that things were not right, and this came from the highest. This came from the 44 four-star generals and admirals, okay? They know what's going on. And I think beyond that, and this proves that we have been infiltrated to such a high degree that people don't even understand that our entire military has been hijacked, and that our volunteer sons and daughters have been taken hostage, unbeknownst to them themselves. They are like, oh, you are a Marine, you are a soldier, you're so good, we're going to give you an award and all this stuff, and but guard this opium field, but protect this building where we're transferring whatever. Yeah. So let's listen to this. This is interesting, too.
That's right. James Comer said October 10th, 2020, the story publishes, and there was a coordinated campaign to suppress the New York Post, one of the 5 largest newspapers in the United States, and those who shared the story, including me. I was White House press secretary at the time. I shared it on my personal account. They blocked my personal account and would not unblock it until I took down the story. But what makes this galling is to think, and I'm so glad James Comer is asking these questions, the FBI, while we are in office, the Trump administration is having weekly meetings with social media companies. Not only that, they reportedly warned of a hack and leak operation against Hunter Biden. So imagine that, someone who is in the executive branch working, myself, and the FBI, same federal government, going behind the scenes, potentially coordinating with social media companies to suppress the voice of the American people as embodied in the executive branch. It is appalling. And good on the GOP for it's only January asking the questions.
Yes. Jason, that sounds like weaponization to me.
Yeah, that's the deep concern, is that you had people with police powers, people that regulate these people. You have the former general counsel of the Federal Bureau of Investigation who's now working for Twitter. And suddenly these people come in. They get so brazen and so aggressive. Not that they're breaking the law, that they're breaking terms of service of Twitter, but it's all for a political agenda. Isn't it a coincidence that it just always goes against Republicans, always against conservatives? And for the federal government to use its resources of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to push this narrative and to push Republicans out of the discussion and suppress a story that they know is true. They had this laptop for a long time. Yes. They knew it was true, and yet they pushed Twitter to take it down.
There was a moment, Molly, that I wanted to draw your attention to that really illustrates to me how these executives stoked that divisive fire, stoked that hyperbolic nature, the cesspool of Twitter themselves. Let's watch.
Mr. Roth, did you write this tweet?
I regret the language that I used in some of my former tweets, but yes, I did post that.
And I'll read the tweet so it's in the record. Yes, that person in the pink hat is clearly a bigger threat to your brand of feminism than actual Nazis in the White House. Mr. Roth, do you think all conservatives are Nazis?
Certainly not, sir.
What about the hundreds of people who worked in the Trump administration?
Certainly not.
Did Ms. Gaddy or any other lawyer at Twitter ever tell you to take down that tweet?
No, Twitter did not have a practice of restricting employees.
Oh, Twitter doesn't have a practice of restricting employees, Molly, only conservatives. What this underscores to me is that not only is there absolutely sort of an unfettered environment there in terms of stoking that fire that I said, but that they are the ones that really push forward this environment that they blame others for, that they use this rhetoric that matters, that has actual consequences. And until now, their feet weren't held to the fire, because all of a sudden now, oh, certainly, sir. Oh, I regret it, sir. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. But these keyboard warriors at the time with the Twitter bird on their back seemed to have no problem at the time.
Right. At the beginning of this, you were seeing these Democrats saying censorship of American speech is not a big deal. It's not important. We don't want to work on it. In fact, violation of people's First Amendment rights by having the government coordinate with very powerful corporations to destroy people's right to share information, to destroy freedom of the press. The New York Post is a large newspaper. It's the oldest continuously publishing newspaper in America. They absolutely had the goods on one of the most important stories of the 2020 election. This is election meddling at a level that is just unthinkable. I mean, we heard because Russia was doing its typical meddling with Facebook ads in 2016, we had to shut the entire country down and run an entire, campaign of like putting everyone we could think of in jail over this. But here, Twitter and other even more powerful social media companies were colluding with the government, which knew they were lying. This is a massive story. Our Constitution is important. The First Amendment is important. And I wish Democrats would see that as well as some Republicans are.
Absolutely. And Tammy, there was a moment as well where Comer talked to the former executives, all three at the time, and he sort of described the whimsy that they addressed something that was an actually really big, complex situation, like Molly just underlined. Let's listen.
Mr. Roth, Ms. Gaddy, and Mr. Baker, it appears to me that you failed at your jobs. In a matter of hours, you were deciding on the truth of a story that spans years and dozens of complex international transactions.
Oh, the power they wielded.
Yes, and what we also learned through the Twitter files, thank God for that data, is that when there was even some debate or a rejection by Twitter employees, like about Russian bots, when there was a list that came over that there was these.
Yeah, so if you haven't listened to that, it is well worth your time, and listening to it again and again. It you can dissect it. You've got to dissect your news. It's really important to wrap your head around it and understand what is going on, because none of this could happen without the FBI, right? None of this could happen without the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's our 4-star generals and admirals, right? Our 44 4-star billets. None of this could be possible without them marching along and agreeing with this and contributing to this and planning it and doing their operational orders with it and everything. And it is so huge that it's very hard for us to get our head around. And Richard, our son, missing soldier son, just this anomaly, because being adopted from Poland, living his life as a military, we call them military brats, military child, in Europe and in Ireland. And Ireland is also odd, because not Dublin, where most people live, not on the coastlines where the others live, but right smack in the middle, where it is just as Irish as you can get, with the cows and the sheep, and living his life there, growing up there. So here he is, this anomaly, but learning Korean and learning German, and traveling easily on the train to Dublin and back, and doing his barista, experiencing the city life, and of course Seoul, Korea, and Incheon, and flying all the time. Here he is with all of these experiences and a firm foundation in his Christian faith, a very firm foundation, an understanding of the Nicene Creed, an understanding of the Apostle Creed, an understanding of the Athanasius Creed, an understanding of the Lord's Prayer, an understanding of the Trinity, an understanding of the sacraments, an understanding of the history of the church, and what a saint is. So here he is, an anomaly. And I was trying to tell people, something stinks. And our friends knew. Our friends knew that it was stinky. And here it is, the FBI right now. This is our huge lead that we want questions answered. And that is the FBI hiding the remains of our son? Because they did not want this border issue, along with the military issue, and along with all of the major very violent crimes in the military. This is such a big story, and in 2020 it would have been a huge story, but they kept it hidden. They kept it hidden, and they shadow banned us. Absolutely. I would really, really love to question the leadership, because I absolutely believe that we have been shadow banned, because we've been sabotaged we had an asymmetric warfare officer be assigned to us as a liaison, and we caught him. We caught him up to no good sabotaging the search for our son. Absolutely. We have proof of it. We have, what do you call sending a senior leader to the military police guard mount? That's where you stand and you give a report, you give announcements, you give awards to the military police there at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas, and you groundlessly smear the missing soldier. What do you call that? That's called a psychological operation, as part of asymmetric warfare tactics. So, we have proof of that. And poor Anthony Swafford, a military police soldier, young father, got conned, got hoodwinked into believing his senior leader. It's like talk about Nazis. It's like getting conned by Hitler. Okay, that's what it's like. If you want to know, and you can use several different countries and wars where the leader lies to their military and gets them to support them on false premises. And that's exactly what Anthony Swafford fell into. He didn't ask, do you have proof? Is this groundless? Or what does this matter? Why don't we find him first? And then we can know for sure what's going on. But there was so much crime inside the military that the military police soldier easily believed it, easily got conned. So here we are as Americans, the same standard operating procedures as was used in Richard's case, used against all Americans during the election, we hear. Absolutely, this is election interference. And it's also health interference, because we know that doctors were trying to get out some good questions and good advice and good information, and they were banned. They were shadow banned, and they were banned, censored. Okay, let's see. What does do not amplify mean? That was really good. If you haven't seen that, that's really good. Okay, so this is pretty good too. Let's listen in.
Momentarily, but for the record, Mr. Baker, Ms. Gotti, Mr. Roth, Mr. Navaroli, are you here under the advice of counsel, and do you have counsel present?
Yes, sir.
That was a yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I do.
Yes, I was subpoenaed.
That's good to know. I'm glad you all have counsel present. Mr. Chairman, for the for submission for the record, I'd like consent to submit the Twitter files dated December the 8th, posted by the New York Post regarding the suppression of conservative commentators. Like that submitted.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'd like to also submit for the record a timeline of events with cited sources outlining strong evidence of the Biden family organized criminal actions would certainly indicate that we've crossed the threshold of reasonable suspicion. I'd like this timeline submitted for the record.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Where is that from, that timeline?
Timeline in my hand, boss. I'll get it to you shortly. Bottom line is that the FBI had the Biden crime family laptop for a year. They knew it was leaking. They knew it would hurt the Biden campaign. So the FBI used its relationship with Twitter to suppress criminal evidence being revealed about Joe Biden 1 month before the 2020 elections. You, ladies and gentlemen, interfered with the United States of America 2020 presidential election, knowingly and willingly. That's the bad news. It's going to get worse because this is the investigation part. Later comes the arrest part. Your attorneys are familiar with that. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to spend 5 hours with these ladies and gentlemen doing.
Yeah, so that was amazing. And we're hoping that's what's going to be coming in Richard's case. We've done the investigation. We have everything. We have everything, y'all. And so many people need to be indicted in this case. So many people. This is so criminal. And we have it all. We have enough to know exactly what happened to Richard. And we need just one, this whole thing, what's happening right now, I'm hoping is a whole change, a shift, so that we can get our law enforcement agencies to have some in there with personal courage, with duty, with honor, with integrity, with respect to our sons and daughters that volunteer to serve in our military and have their six and solve this case and bring home our son. Because right now, we believe that the FBI is hiding the remains of our son that they found in Juarez, Mexico. And we believe he was in uniform. Okay? So this was and Richard would never go over there in uniform. So this was a drugging. They hurt him somehow, and this shaved handled truck to take him over there through the Santa Teresa port of entry and murder him and dump him over there. And we, y'all, there's so much to this case. There's so much to it. And the fact is that they have been covering it up. And by the grace of God, God has been revealing it. No thanks to our $1 trillion agencies, okay, that have committed treason, that have committed crimes against humanity. And where does it stop? In our case, it is with the 4-star generals and admirals. It's with the 44 4-star generals and admirals. They are the worst type of criminal. And of course, the media. The media could have held their feet to the fire. And they are the worst type of criminal. And they don't even know they are. They don't even know they are. Some of them know, some of them don't even know. Because they're just trying to survive because of the level of corruption that we're living in right now. And the level of lies that we're buried in right now. That we can't even see straight. We see like through a fogged mirror. But with love, right? Love is the greatest of these. You know, that just like seeing through a fogged mirror. That's 1 Corinthians 13, right? And the greatest of these is love. When we find someone with real love, a real love, not a lust, porn, cult, selfish desire. I'm talking about selfless service, integrity, the love for the Constitution, the rule of law, having law enforcement and having it checked, and having a government and having it checked. Then we will get closure in this case. And we need indictments. We need indictments because it is just, you cannot plea deal. You cannot plea deal with this level of attack, with this level of crime. So let's hear some more.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Matt Taibbi, a respected reporter who published much of the Twitter files, said, quote, Twitter's contact with FBI was constant and pervasive, as if it were a subsidiary. Now, I want to better understand why he would suggest that. Mr. Roth, while at Twitter, how many meetings did you have with the FBI?
I couldn't say for sure, but I would
More
say
than 10?
That's a
More than
reasonable
20?
estimate. I couldn't say for sure.
More than 50?
That seems a bit high.
Many
Lots of meetings, y'all. Lots of meetings. Just like, did you know that Director Ford flew to El Paso to pick up Richard's file from Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe? Yeah. If Richard was just some cold case, that wouldn't happen. He went and picked it up. They wanted to talk. There were messages delivered. Oh, yeah. And I don't know who delivered them. Was it Director Ford? Because it seems like our generals are just like little puppies, that they have been rearing puppies and are reared puppies. See, people know that. That's not me. And that's why that meme was made. Yeah, it's bad. Can't remember what this was. Let's see how far down. Yeah. I'll do this one.
All of that leading up to the October 14, 2020, when the New York Post published its story, everything was already in place. Mm-hmm. So, Mr. Roth, my question to you is, when 51 intelligence officials told us that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, the Democrats, the mainstream media, the president, all repeated this lie. Now that you know what you know years later, do you still believe that the Hunter Biden laptop is not real? Or do you believe it's real?
Sir, I never held that belief.
Do you believe that the story is Russian disinformation?
No, sir. I didn't then and I don't now.
Okay. I have a question for Mr. Baker. You started your role...
that's just speechless. Let's listen to Tucker now.
A new one at the State Department, the number 2 at the State Department, and Joe Biden threatened to blow up the Nord Stream pipeline. Watch.
I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that? Exactly. Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
So then the pipelines actually blew up. These are the pipelines that bring natural gas from Eastern Europe to Western Europe to keep the European economy going. And they exploded, causing the single largest human-caused environmental disaster in all of history. And again, setting Europe on the road to actual poverty. So it was an unpopular event, and Joe Biden denied any responsibility. In fact, he blamed Russia. Joe Biden and his whole administration told us that somehow Russia, for reasons they never made clear, just because they're evil, had sabotaged their own energy pipeline. Watch this.
It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation and lies.
So that was in September, and it was obvious from the very first day, well, that's not true. It's not that Vladimir Putin is too good a person to blow up Nord Stream, but, like, why would he? It only hurts him. And by the way, it really hurts Western Europe. But a lot of media outlets repeated that lie dutifully. That's what they do, and attacked us as Putin stooges for having questions about it. Well, we know a lot more now. There have been a number of official investigations of what happened, and not one has found any evidence of Russian involvement. And now we have the actual answer to what happened. Oh, the Biden administration did it. For real. Investigative reporter Seymour Hersh, who's been around for more than 50 years, just wrote a piece on Substack that includes this, quote, last June, the Navy divers, U.S. Navy divers, operating under the cover of a widely publicized midsummer NATO exercise known as Baltops 22, planted remotely triggered explosives that 3 months later destroyed 3 of the 4 Nord Stream pipelines, according to a source with direct knowledge of the operational planning. Now, this piece continues. It's probably the most comprehensive news story you will read this year. Seymour Hersh on Substack, you should read it. And it recounts in detail meetings with the National Security Advisor at the White House, where this was planned, exactly what explosives were used, how they were triggered, by what aircraft, on what day. So many details in here that it is not possible that it's not true. It is true. And in fact, no one at a high level in the U.S. government is denying it with any specificity, and said the White House is just dismissing it as utterly false, and no reporters are following.
Yeah. So this is the level of lies. And so it is not absurd for Rob and I to know that the 44 four-star generals and admirals, those demons that are wearing our beautiful uniforms with the 4 stars on them, are liars. Okay? That they are serving foreign and domestic enemies. This is their big lie. They say that they are defending the Constitution, that they are meeting their obligations to care for their service members. That is not true. That's not true. And Richard got in the way of that, and they had to hide it. And that's why we haven't gotten answers, because, you know, this is something I learned at being a homeschool mom. And I was amazed, because we adopted the boys when they were 5 and 8. So I needed to get them reading English, right? I needed to teach them English. I needed to teach them English and teach them the English language. They spoke Polish. And so I used Alphaphonics. I used McGuffey's Online Tutor, the McGuffey's Readers. We created McGuffey's Online Tutor as a homeschool project. And one thing that it was just amazing, because we were homeschooling, okay? So we were at home. It's the 5 of us, right? It's the 5 of us. Rob was, he stayed home for a little bit when we adopted them, but then he got deployed. You know, he was deployed all the time. And so, you know, we're doing all of our house chores and doing all of our things, and I'm doing a few hours of school, 1-2 hours of school with the boys every day when it comes to writing and reading. And the rest is playing games and going out and just getting to know them, because number one, they're 8 and 5 and we don't even know them. We're bonding, you know, so we have to have, there's just so many different things that we had to take care of, the first year that we had Robert and Richard. And bonding was the most important. And then getting them to learn English, other things, lots of things, right? So one thing I did realize is, wow, 6 months, and they were speaking fluent English and reading and writing. And I'm like, wow, my education training lied to me. It is not difficult to teach people how to read. It's not difficult at all. You know, and I'm not saying those that have disabilities or whatever. We have so many with disabilities now. I wonder why. But it is really something when you see it very easily, you can teach children how to read very quickly, and to really understand the mechanics of the language. Eclectically, which means phonetically, sight reading, by memory, you know, different methods. So that was just something I learned. So you transfer that over, this is not a hard case. It's a very easy case. When you can download from the cloud all of Richard's information, where he is and all the phone messages and from Google, from his social media, everything like that, and then you have that unit that is not a democracy. You can bring them all in, talk to every one of them, and then, you know, you have the FBI and you have the CID and you have the community, and I mean, you have so many resources. These generals have so many resources and recourses, unlike the family that gets thrown out. And I learned very quickly they're covering up because they could figure this case out. This is not a difficult case, y'all. It is not. They knew everything before we even knew that Richard was missing. That's my guess. And I'm not the only one. This is not difficult. And they lead you to believe, oh, this is a cold case. This is a cold case. Oh, Enrique is a cold case. Oh, what happened to Vanessa? We didn't know. Oh my gosh. What happened to Caleb? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. We have to spend 3.5 years to make a plea deal with Byron Booker and Jordan Brown for slaughtering Austin Hawk in his barracks room when they have everything in a week. They knew exactly what happened. And they make it seem so difficult, and it's not. And it's not. They are really, really evil. Evil leadership that we have. So I sound like a little cynical, but I want everyone to know that some of these people that can talk very pretty, that look pretty, can be very, very evil. And we need to know how to discern, and we need to be tough and know that there needs to be indictments. There needs to be a stand up, a will to fight for what's right, meaning for justice, to do our due diligence for justice. And we have huge problems because we have proof that the Nord Stream was blown up by us, because, you know, the White House represents us. And the 2020 election was rigged The moon is not a rock. Richard just didn't go missing. There's never been a virus isolated. No matter how many people you listen to, go to the source. Have you isolated a virus? Nope, 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 nope. Okay, well, then you can't do Cox postulates. Nope, we can't. We can't do Cox postulates. So then contagion has not been proven. That's right. Contagion hasn't been proven. Then what the heck is going on? And that's the bigger question. That's the bigger question. So there's just so much here. And I think Richard's case now is just as big as a case of any of those others, because it involves the corruption of our military that's supposed to be defending our country, our land, and our people. And they have an obligation to care for their service members. And how many service members have to get hurt, have to be left out in the cold before we say, no, we don't want our 44 four-star generals to be serving foreign and domestic enemies on our dime and destroying our military and destroying our sons and daughters, our country and other countries for a business plan or power or whatever. So, yeah, it's so hard to be sweet. But then when I went today with the kids from my Sunday school class, and we did some Valentine's Day gifts, some crafts, and it was all about 1 Corinthians 13, which is just amazing that came up today. And then we did Pilgrim's Progress, a catch-up today. Today was a catch-up day. And, you know, giant despair in Pilgrim's Progress cannot hurt, cannot kill. They cannot kill and eat, even though they're giants. They have to make the environment so evil and so bad and so depressing and take away all your hope that you commit suicide. You see, that's what they do. Well, that giant despair is nicer than our 44 four-star generals and admirals. But that's kind of what they do. They train to suicide. That's what Elder Fernandez's mother said, and I think she deserves a PhD, an honorary PhD for that. She's very smart. All right, everyone. You know, just remember that Valentine's Day is coming up. Do not let them take that away from you. Go read 1 Corinthians 13, all about love. What is love? And be blessed. Be blessed with that. And yeah, dissect that and you'll really be blessed. And thank you so much. Let me turn this off so you can see. Call 941-677-0060 if you have any information leading to finding Richard. And right now, you know, the cashier at the Dollar General, she's really on the top of this list for a $150,000 reward. There are many others on the list, and I'm very grateful for all of them because it has been a team effort, Team Find Richard Halliday, that has really investigated my son's case with us. And so I'm very, very appreciative, and I have not forgotten at all. So, but there is still $150,000 for credible information leading to finding Richard. So thank you, everyone, and we'll be back tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have more news for you. God bless you.